Hey guys, it's Lindsay, and I wanted to make a video today about a member of our congregation, Kim Wilson, who is also my sister, but is someone who loves baking and is a competitive baker. So without further ado, I am going to introduce you to Kim.
Hi guys, Kim here.
So Kim, can you tell me a little bit about how you got interested in baking?
About 10 years ago, I decided I'd been to a lot of local fairs, and I got interested in watching some of the home craft demonstrations. And I find baking really interesting because you're using different agents to create masterpieces, delicious masterpieces, and delicious desserts and loaves and all sorts of different things. And I wanted to learn a new skill, and I saw it as an opportunity to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and so I enjoy challenges, and I started in 2010, June of 2010, doing competitive baking. My first foray into baking was actually at the Millbrook Fair, where I won some prizes, I just kind of went from there. The two big recipes that I tended to do very well in was 60% whole wheat loaf, and the other being cherry loaf. What you see here before me are some of the ribbons that I've won in competitions over the years. I have represented Lindsay Central Exhibition. I've represented Millbrook Fall Summer Fair. I've also represented Norwood Fair at District 4, which is all the fairs in our region. They come together in October and have a big competition. So each of the fairs send reps, the people that win in the fair competitions. They get to go and compete for the chance to win first place. And the first place person actually ends up going to what's called the Ontario Association of Agricultural Societies annual general meeting in Toronto, which is held in February every year. And they get to compete with people from across Ontario to become possibly the champion. When I was competing a few years ago, it was the 60% whole wheat loaf. That was the recipe that we were using. Today now they actually use butter tarts as the recipe. They changed it up. You see here some of my ribbons where I competed.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your ribbons, the ones that you laid out here, and why they're special to you?
Making bread. So these ribbons here to my left are these are the 60% whole wheat loaf. These are just a selection of ribbons that I've used or won over the years. I guess it's just Lindsay and Norwood in particular are very competitive fairs. You get a lot of good bakers coming from across the region. In particular, you get people from Toronto sometimes. It's not just local people. So it's a very competitive field, both Lindsay and Norwood. So it's a real confidence booster when you learn that you've won against a lot of people in that category. And we have quite a few, probably 10 loaves in each category that people that are judged. Practice makes perfect. When I started out, bread wasn't my thing, and I basically started working on it and practicing with it. And once you get practicing, practice makes perfect. You just gotta keep trying. It's like pastry. Pastry's another area. Pastry's not really my forte. Bread seems to be more my forte, my expertise. You kind of find where what works and what doesn't work, and you kind of find your niche where. So, for example, bread is my niche. Some people it's pastry. Other people it's squares and cookies or whatever it is. But mine, I found my niche in the quick breads and in the breads. And so over here I talk about quick breads. This is the cherry loaf. You'll see my ribbons for the cherry loaf.
Do you want to hold them up and show them?
So this is Norwood Fair. I do have Lindsay ribbons, but I can't find them. But I won several years at both Norwood and Lindsay fairs for the cherry loaf. That's the recipe that we're going to make today. A very simple recipe, but it's a very good recipe, and it's delicious cherry loaf. So we'll get showing.
So why don't we go over and we'll show you guys how to make a cherry loaf.
Okay. I don't know if I'm right.
Oh, sure. There's one last ribbon that you wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my ribbon. So this is from 2015. This is the Ontario Association of Agricultural Societies. This was District 4. So that year I represented Lindsay Exhibition and actually Norwood, I believe. Actually, Lindsay, Millbrook, and Norwood. And I won first place for my bread that year, which was pretty exciting. I've come third in the district competition before, but that year I won first. And it's pretty exciting for me. I really enjoyed the competition and learning the different, or like tweaking out my recipe and stuff like that. And yeah, it's something that I hold really dear to my heart. It was a really good loaf of bread that I made for that one.
Great. All right. So shall we go over and start the cherry loaf?
We shall.
Okay.
So we're going to start with our wet ingredients. It's really important when we're reading a recipe. We want to sort between our wet and our dry ingredients. So first off, we're going to start with our wet ingredients. And so what I have here is we're going to make a cherry maraschino loaf, which is a very nice, it's a very moist, very easy to slice, a very pretty loaf. It's got cherries dispersed through it. It's a very delicious loaf and very tasty. I've actually brought it to church sometimes, and it's a crowd pleaser. It's very, very, very yummy. So anyways, so we'll get started on that. So our wet ingredients. So our first ingredient is our butter, and we have, it's a 1/4 cup of butter. So I'm going to pour that into my bowl there, okay? And then the next one is 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of granulated sugar. So I'm going to pour that in there as well. We have 1 egg. So pour that into there. And we're going to beat this now. We're going to stir it, really beat it good. Mix it all together. There we go. Watch me. I'm just going to get that all. Now you can use a spatula. I'm using a spoon. Spatula is probably better, but sometimes you just have to kind of go with what you have. So you improvise. So that's okay. You're allowed to improvise. All right, so we're beating this until it's smooth, which you see here. It's a nice yellow smooth composition. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add our milk. And so our milk is 2/3 cup. I've kind of just measured it out into a glass here. There we go. Okay. Next thing we're gonna have is some maraschino cherry juice, which I'm gonna just pour from the, normally I'd measure this out, but I'm just gonna kind of wing it today. Put some in there.
You want it to look pink?
You want it to look pink. It's gonna look very pink here in just a moment. And then we have some almond flavoring. So the maraschino cherry juice is 1/3 cup. And then we have, I'm just gonna add a little dash of the almond flavoring. There we go. Almond flavoring is really nice. It has a really nice texture to it. Okay. So then we're gonna mix that all together. There it goes. Keep that nice and stirred together. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put that aside for right now until combine that later on. Now we have our second bowl, and this is where we put our dry ingredients together, right? So we're keeping our ingredients separate first. So we've done our wet ingredients, and now we're doing our dry ingredients, okay? So the first ingredient for the dry is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So get out of my bag here. Now it's really important that we level off our ingredients. So normally what I do is I take a knife here and I just level off very clearly with a knife just to even it out. There we go. Those of you in 4-H will know this. Okay. Which we have here, and it calls.
And that was pre-measured, right?
That was pre-measured. It's 1.5 tablespoons. Okay. Made. And I'm going to combine.
You're going to put the dry into the wet ingredients, right?
That's right.
And is that something that you always do? Is it usually always the dry into the wet?
It depends. It depends what you're making. In this recipe, it calls for dry into the wet. When you're doing cakes and stuff like that, you usually alternate your wet and your dry ingredients. But that's another whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
But in this case, this is a quick bread. This is a quick bread. So you basically, like I said, you have your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients, and then you combine them at the end. So this one, yeah, again, it calls for dry into wet. So we're gonna start stirring this. We want to stir it just to moisten. We don't want to stir it like continually. We want to make sure to stir it to moisten. So then here comes the ultimate fun part: the cherries. The cherries. So these are cherries. These are maraschino cherries, which you can get at the grocery store. What I've done is I've cut up and diced them. I cut them into quarters, and so they go in. We're gonna put them in. They always go in last. Always in last. But that's the good part. Always save the best for last. So here we go. We're gonna put our cherries in, and again, we're just gonna lightly stir it, just enough that it's moistened in the mix here, the batter.
And now, how did you prepare this pan? What did you do to the pan?
I greased the pan. You can use parchment paper. Now this is I'm improvising today because I'm at my neighbor's house filming this. So I used her butter grease or butter spray. Normally I prefer to use parchment paper. You can also use tinfoil, but parchment paper is probably the better. Parchment paper helps the loaf lift easier out of the pan. But there's different methods. This one's not too bad. This is a really good pan. It's a loaf pan. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that, and I'm going to put the batter, pour it in. Now we want to make sure that we're not filling our pan too full, all right? Because this thing's going to rise. This loaf is going to rise. So we're going to put it in at the recipe calls for 350. I put it in at 360. It always depends on your oven. Everybody's oven is different. You have to kind of know your temperature, your oven temperatures. So you get your mom and dad to help you with that. Always have an adult when you're using an oven and stuff like that, because obviously these things are, they can be complicated. But yeah, I'm doing it at 360 today. We'll see how it does, and it's going to be for about an hour. So there we go. In it goes. Let's see what happens. Grab a plate. I don't have a wire rack with me. Normally what I would do is I would put it over onto a wire rack to cool a little bit better. But we're improvising today, so that's okay. Normally with a loaf, you want to see a nice big peak, a nice rise that goes up over the top. But sometimes things happen, and you know what? It doesn't mean that the loaf isn't good to eat. It's still delicious, and it's going to look really good. We're going to let it cool for a bit, and then we're going to slice it up, and I'll show you what the inside looks like, and it'll be really good. Okay, so we're going to slice this cherry loaf. I'm going to try from the end here. Let's see how we do. Look at that, nice and first. It's it's like almost like it's almost like a fruit cake. It is a fruit cake, kind of sort of in a way.
So that is your prize-winning cherry loaf.
Yes.